do I think that'll happen? No, I don't think so. I think Green Bay is a total S show. I think a lot of these states with winning teams, to your point, the county either has restrictions or the state has restrictions. It's a long shot.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I don't know. I obviously no crystal ball. I'm just interesting to see how that plays out, if it plays out. But anyway, let's get back to this game.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought the two most the most disappointing series and the most impressive series I thought were the last two series of the game. I was really disappointed in our Packers offense, and I'll kind of shoot these all off to you, then you kind of respond and maybe give another example. But I was really disappointed in our offense to not be able to end the game. With 2.5 minutes left, 3rd and 1, and our deep in our own territory. Well, not deep, but 25, 30-yard line. 3rd and 1, obvious run situation. I just wish we would have been able to against a mediocre defense, put the game away like we did in Seattle or in Green Bay against Seattle in the playoffs last year, and just win the game without having our defense needing to make a stand. So I was really disappointed in that last series, regardless of all the stuff that happened in the game. It just would have been nice to see, Jones or Williams being able to pick up that 3rd and 1 and just basically be able to ice the game at that point. But then, right on cue, the most, I thought the most exciting part of the entire game was that amazing defensive stand that we had. Obviously, we had the turnover earlier, but I mean, we essentially went, I know we didn't get the sack on 4th down, but we essentially went back-to-back-to-back sacks. I mean, I'm basically counting that 4th down as a sack because, that was a dumb pass out of bounds, on 4th and forever. And, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Za'Darius. It was just it was for the first time ever. It just felt like Reggie White getting back-to-back sacks, right? Like all these people were just in it, and it was like, oh my God, like for a series there, we had a real freaking defense, and that was just, I couldn't have picked a better way to end the game, even though I was so disappointed in our offense not being able to pick up that 1 yard when it really counted. Did that kind of exemplify the highs and lows of that game?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that when our offense needed an opportunity or had an opportunity to close out the game, they weren't able to do it. And going into that series, I was like, oh man, you know what I mean? We're only up by 4. We weren't able to really get great field position, on the Jaguars. And then, yeah, to your point, here comes the Smiths and Rashawn Gary, and we're able to step up, close out the game. I thought it was awesome. Obviously, one of the highlights from the entire game, especially, from a defense that played okay, not great, but played all right. But that's what you want to see. You want to be able to see, at the very least, at the end of the game, somebody being able to step up and close it out. And this week it was the defense, and again, did enough to win this one, and definitely one of the positives. Like we said, it wasn't all bad. It was a bad team and only won by 4, but I would love to hear those 3 names getting called every week with a sack, because I think that's what people expect. And I think we were hoping to see more and more of Rashawn Gary getting in the mix, having more reps, but also being more disruptive. And I think after an entire game of some decent pressure, it wasn't great, but definitely some quarterback hurries. It was nice to see some of those finally pay off.
Yeah, and the irony is, if they just would have ran the ball, they probably would have been able to win the game. But they did what most people do, and they decided to throw. But all right, so now to the real. I feel like the question that I feel like everyone is tuning into this podcast for, and that's on everyone's mind, is last time Aaron Rodgers ran in a touchdown that ultimately got called back, he did a Key and Peele reference with his touchdown celebration. And I'm honestly asking you this genuinely, because I didn't quite catch it. I didn't have the chance to look it up yet. What was his celebration for this rushing touchdown that Rodgers had this past weekend? I think he called out his number or something. What was that?
I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I've been speculating, and I've heard this a couple times, is that he yelled, "I love gold," which is a reference to Austin Powers' Gold Member.
Sure.
Gold
Yeah.
being the green and
I love
gold.
that.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's true or not,
Yeah.
but if it is true, that's awesome.
Yeah. Before we kind of end the episode, kind of going back on our predictions, which I don't even know why we do predictions anymore because we're wrong no matter what, even in the type of tone. I think it would be irresponsible of us to not admit that the ball didn't solely go to Davante Adams. Davante Adams had a fine game, a very good game, but obviously he had a couple of drops. Their defensive players, their corner broke up, couple big hits on Davante to make him drop a ball. That one, play to make, to break up the pass early on in the game. And you and I wondered what happens when Davante Adams has a bad game. No one is is stepping up, and it obviously is not going to be MVS, because MVS is terrible, and he's proved it time and time again. He'll never be able to step up. And sure enough, almost not on cue. I'm going to say like 2 games later on cue, MVS just has a huge game. He had a bigger game a couple days ago, after one drop, then had 2 touchdowns, but just a huge receptions for, what was that, 80-yard touchdown pass or something like that. But more important, using the referee as a, kind of a 12th blocker, which is awesome.
That was great.
But more importantly, he had a few big time catches,
Oh, yeah.
And had pressure on him, and it was really nice to see. I'm not at all ready to proclaim him anywhere near, ready to be number 2, but it was just nice to be like, yeah, Davante clearly was like, it wasn't like a favor that they were giving, like, oh, Davante's already got his 18 catches, so let's go to MVS now. No, Davante was having a mediocre game. He was still a threat that they had to pay attention to, but it was time to go to someone else because Davante was not quite himself. And it was just nice to see someone step up. And I could have seen us losing that game. MVS is almost the MVP in my book because he made some clutch catches and obviously had a really good day for himself, and at least is still a part of that conversation of being number 2. What do you think? And I know I'm harsher on the receivers in general than you are, but I guess what's your take on that?
Yeah, Charles, I'm really happy for you because you never lost faith in MVS. You always had his back. You were touting him from day one. No, it was great to see him have a big game like this. Again, I think we both agree that he's at best a number 3. Hopefully we get a little bit Lazard back here in the next couple of weeks, but I think that's going to be his role. But if he can have games like this and he can be, play complementary football to Davante Adams, I think we're going to be in good shape. Because if you always and consistently have, a deep threat, they're going to have to. Other teams are going to have to address it. They're going to have to, have a guy on him, and I don't know if that's going to be their best corner or the fastest corner, but certainly it's going to draw a lot of attention, and even more so when he catches those balls. You know what I mean? And he had some great yards after the catch this week. Made a great move and used the ref as a blocker, which was awesome to see. But yeah, I'm gonna say it again. Darius Shepard, where are you? Don't make me look like an idiot all season. Let's go.
See, now you're just getting greedy.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it was great to see MVS play really well. I would say this is probably the first time we've ever seen him play a complete game. It was only 4 receptions, let's be fair, but he basically caught everything that came to him. Some of them were contested catches, which I think we're going to see more of. Sometimes that's a skill you just have to learn. You have to learn how to beat an NFL defensive back, and I think he's starting to figure that out.
4 catches, and one of them for sure, maybe 2, but one of them was kind of a ab-lib type catch where the route was over. He kind of went with the flow with Aaron rolling out, and then, he picked up a big first down. So, for sure. Let's get to our predictions. Let's just do it really quickly. I know I had, I think I technically win this one, just because I had the Packers not covering. I think it was 42 though to 30, so I had them at 12. We both picked the over. We both picked Packers winning. We both picked them winning by more. And I think we both would have hoped that the game would have been put away much earlier. But again, good to see the Packers at least squeak out one that they obviously should have won. And I'm going to say should have won, not need to win, because obviously we're, obviously on top of the division. But, I want to take a second here as well to talk about what happened around the NFC. Not the NFC North, because there's a big game tonight, Bears, Vikings. I'll ask you here in a minute who we should be rooting for in that game. The Lions won. They're not really a concern right now. But I think more importantly, the Seahawks just lost their 3rd out of 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams, Cardinals, and Seahawks are all beating up on each other. And obviously we all know that the best record gets the first, the first seed. But in the event of a tie in the overall record, they go to your divisional record. And I think obviously we lost to the Vikings, which we want back. But I think that puts even more emphasis on these Bears games coming up if we're able to kind of keep this pace, because the other big time contenders in this division are all kind of beating up on each other and giving each other divisional losses. So if we want that home field advantage, even though we don't know exactly how much that's going to help us without without likely fans being there. I think again, I don't want to jump the gun. I'm gonna knock on wood here, but again, we're kind of in control of our own destiny. I don't know if I'm going to predict we're going to win out by any means, but even if we have a loss or two to go for the rest of the season, I think we're in a really good position to be snagging and grabbing that first overall seed.
Yeah, and as it stands right now, the Packers are in the driver's seat. I mean, we're the number 1 seed in the NFC as it stands today. Obviously the Bears-Vikings game tonight won't have a lot of impact on that this week, but we still have 3 divisional games to play this season. So those are huge. Huge games, and we've got a couple. I don't know. I would say a couple tough games coming up here, but yeah. I mean, opportunity to clinch home field advantage would be absolutely insane. I know Rodgers has wanted that for a long time. Obviously, maybe this is the worst year to do that as far as the home field advantage with no fans. Right. But it's still Lambeau in December and January, so. We'll see how that goes.
It's still your own bed. It's not. Yeah. It's not traveling, across country to Seattle or whatever it might be. So, I think that would be huge. Okay, so I watched the game this weekend with my father-in-law, who is a big-time Vikings fan, and I told my mother-in-law that I should probably call this episode of what it's like watching a Packers game with a Vikings fan who's your father-in-law, because Jesus Christ, every time there was a penalty. or should have been a penalty. It was, I would not hear the end of it. But I bring that all up because A, I just want to take a shot at him, but B, because there's a very inconsequential game, in my opinion, between the Bears and the Vikings tonight. And because I'll be watching that tonight on local TV here in Minnesota, deep inside enemy territory. Who are we rooting for? Not necessarily for playoff position or anything like that, but do you want to see one team win? Do you want to see one team lose? I'm kind of mixed. How do you feel?
I mean, I think because they have a worse schedule, or I should say a worse record, I'm rooting for the Vikings. That would get the Bears down to, I think, 500, or one game or 2 games below 500.
500.
Yeah, 500, and so. And the Vikings with a win wouldn't even be to 500. So from that perspective, I'm thinking kind of we're talking about the NFC West and how those teams are all beating up on each other. I'd like to see the scales tip a little bit, away from the Bears, just because at this point they're the only real threat in the division. I think. I mean, you can make an argument for the Lions, but probably not. So I'm gonna say.
So I got 2. Yeah, so all right. So you're gonna say go for the Vikings. I like that. Because I think that makes the most logical sense. They're going to take away a game from the second place team behind the Packers. But the Vikings are kind of on a roll, right? They beat the Packers. They beat whoever the heck they beat last week. They beat the Bears. And all of a sudden they're thinking, hey, there's an extra playoff spot. And by the way, the owners are thinking about even adding another wild card spot. I guess. I don't know. Fact check me on that. But, part of me is like, the Bears are struggling enough. This might kind of stabilize the ship by picking on a Vikings team that they should beat on paper. But it's kind of scary to think about the Vikings, who, again, like, should be better than they are.